Good afternoon and welcome to What's in it for Africa. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Would you speak about energy?
Definitely.
What about economics?
Yes, for sure.
What about climate change?
Definitely.
Yes, but what's in it for Africa?
Well, you'll find out.
Hello and welcome to What's in it for Africa, the EU Africa update show with me, Uzo Madu. On the show this month, the EU stops funding to Burundi. Also, the Special Committee on Tax meets with banks, multinational companies and governments. Also, the public consultation on the climate change impact from international aviation. And Tarila Ebiede from the European Centre for Development Policy Management joins us to give us a heads up on what's coming up in April. So, let's get started. The European Union cut off direct financial support for the Burundian government since it has not done enough to solve the political conflict that's ongoing. Now, Burundi's President Pierre Nkurunziza triggered the crisis back in April last year when he announced he would bid for a third term. He then went on to win a disputed election in the face of protests and violent clashes. The European Union funds about half of the Burundian annual budget and was set to provide 450 million euros to Burundi up until 2020. The EU has imposed sanctions on officials close to Burundi's president and has said that it is committed to providing emergency assistance and would prepare projects in order to ensure basic services reach the population, but without channeling resources through the government. This decision is set to worsen economic problems for Burundi. It was only last year that the World Bank predicted an economic crisis for the country, describing how the political crisis made possible by Nkurunziza would turn a decade of good economic performance into a macroeconomic collapse. Now, the EU decision will be reviewed every 6 months. Last month, the Tax Committee met with banks, government representatives and multinational companies as part of an ongoing investigation into tax avoidance in the European Union. Tax avoidance not only deprives governments of a great deal of revenue, but it also gives an unfair advantage to multinational companies over domestic companies, which cannot easily reduce their tax bills by shifting income abroad. Now, banks were questioned about financial products and also the advisory services they provide to their clients to reduce their tax bills. These financial institutions in facilitating tax avoidance by giving this advice have a role to play in the tens of billions leaving the continent every year. Representatives from multinational companies said they would welcome more clarity about their tax liabilities in the EU, but were also concerned about the increased administrative compliance costs and were also reluctant to see tax data being made public. Now, a recent report by the UN High-Level Panel on Financial Flows from Africa, which is chaired by Thabo Mbeki, the ex-South African president, really highlights the problem of the lack of tax transparency. For example, under just one secret contract, a company only paid less than 20% of the tax rate established by law. This is an important factor in a continent where natural resources are the main source of government revenues and foreign exchange earnings. During the meeting, governments were criticised about the low level, even zero rate of corporate tax, and many government representatives rejected the idea of these countries being a tax haven. Now, 51 countries on the African continent are developing, and it's estimated that flows of investment into developing countries via low tax regimes have actually doubled over the past decade. Now, the bulk of these flows actually come from only 2 EU countries, the Netherlands and Luxembourg. Developing countries stand to lose approximately 90 billion euros every year due to foreign investment being channeled through offshore hubs alone. The European Commission has opened a public consultation on measures to reduce the climate change impact from international aviation. The consultation focuses on new measures developed at the International Civil Aviation Organization underway, based on the EU emissions trading system, but also focusing on how to make the Paris Agreement on climate change a reality. The EU trading scheme is the largest in the world, and it works by placing a cap on the total emissions allowed. Then allowances adding up to the cap are provided to the companies regulated by the scheme. Companies can then trade their allowances, providing an incentive for them to reduce their emissions. The EU trading scheme will be revised in the light of the new international rules being developed. This will happen in around 2017, and as such, the EU hopes to be able to better inform them with the results coming out of this public consultation. So it's important that African aviation players are poised to engage in this discussion, not only because African countries pay the highest price for climate change, but also to ensure that the new international rules are crafted in their economic and environmental interests. Now, the public consultation closes on the 30th of April. Now, let's hear what's coming up in April from Tarila.
So what's happening this April in Europe that is of interest to those watching us from Africa? In April, there will be an inquiry into the UK's Africa Free Trade Initiative, AFTI. The AFTI turned 5 in February, and UK's Prime Minister David Cameron will visit Kenya in June. The AFTI has contributed in the design of regional integration policies. It also supported the COMESA EAC SADC Tripartite Free Trade Agreement, which aim to reduce trade barriers among member states. Also in April, there will be a presentation of the Common Fishery Policy at the European Parliament. This is important because this policy governs the conduct of European companies in international waters, including those in Africa. That's it for April. You want to know what's happening in May? Don't forget to watch What's in It for Africa.
Thank you for watching the EU Africa Update Show, and remember you can sign up to our monthly mailing list to get access to plenty more links and updates directly to your inbox. Please see the video description for more information or visit the website. Only 2 more weeks until your next dose of EU Africa current affairs with the Inside the Issue show on the Economic Partnership Agreement between the EU and West Africa. Until then, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter and like our Facebook page. My name is Uzo Madu for What's in It for Africa.